I say we just
Thank you, Paul.
Evan had too much to drink last night. He's a little upside down.
Oh, feeling that.
And this was all
have
because of
watching
the
on YouTube.
autofocus.
I know. I don't know what's going on. How do I change this thing?
You guys aren't on YouTube, you're missing out. Evan has somehow turned himself upside down, literally.
Yes, inside out, upside out. Yes. I'll
Just
get it
do the
figured out eventually.
podcast, just do a handstand. Let's just do it that
And
way.
just do it flipped around the other way.
This is actually hilarious. Like I feel like you just need to stay upside down the whole time.
Actually don't know how to flip it back. Oh no.
Oh,
Well, this will be
well,
fun. I'll
I
figure it out
guess
eventually.
in today's podcast episode, we are going to be talking all about 2026 goal setting, since this will be our last episode that comes out for 2025, which is wild.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we want to talk about is as an athlete, how to handle this time of year, whether what phase you're in, but also understanding the landscape of the year ahead. Hey, he's back.
There he
Got it.
is.
I was just getting used to it.
Sorry to throw you off.
Goal one, turn your life upside down. Shake things up. It's a
Just
metaphor.
flip it on its head.
It's a
Yeah.
metaphor.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on like just how to I think set realistic goals for the year because we were talking a little bit before we started recording about, we love when people have big and lofty goals pertaining to competing, but you also have to know like what's realistic, right? Like I'm all for setting big lofty goals, but if you've never competed before and your goal is I don't know, go to the Olympia, that's great, but you have to work, on baby steps to get there, right? So I think we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting, and we also want to maybe before we get started, we touch a little bit briefly on Command the Stage because we do have a couple tickets left for that still.
Yep, yep, yep. So guys, if you're looking for an event where we're going to go over things like, even just the basics of like, nutrition from the foundational stuff into the nuance of how to handle when you hit sticking points, peaking protocols. Um, Gosh, we're gonna have, Lana's gonna be there, so we're gonna be working on posing, whether you're wanting to go to the Bikini Olympia or the Fit Model Olympia, or just get your pro card, or just do your first show. We do a mock show on Sunday, which is always fun. We judge that. We got little awards. Jamaica does a great job making the event feel very, you know, we feel like a family by the end of it. I know that's a big part of it too. And then we have some amazing speakers. So, and it's in Fort Lauderdale in March, which that's a damn fine time to be in Fort Lauderdale.
It
That it
sure
is.
is. And I do want to preface by saying, because I know I've had a couple people ask and reach out about this, and I feel like it's really when people hear about like the posing, they kind of freak out, like if they've never competed before. And so know that this is definitely an event. You don't have to be a competitor to come to this event. It is a little bit more competitor like focused in terms of what we're talking about. But like, I guess my
Yeah.
point in saying this is if you've never competed, there is absolutely a space for you. It's not like you have
Oh
to
yeah.
have
No.
competed and and I sometimes forget that some people think like in order to come to events that like they need to have competed or they need to be a seasoned athlete, and honestly I mean that's what part of the reason we put on these events is to educate people. So like come to these events if you want to learn more. You don't have to have X, Y, and Z show under your belt. Maybe you don't even know if you want to compete, but you're just interested. This is a great opportunity to just learn more about that.
Yeah, I had a few clients that came last year that had never competed before. Their plan was to compete this year, and they did. But it was a really good way to get their feet wet on it, right? I do think that is a really helpful thing for people. So if it's something you're interested in doing, maybe this year, next year, or somewhere down the road, I think you'll get a lot out of it.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, just the subtle like community sense you get through it. If you're somebody that doesn't really have friends in this industry or you don't really know many people who are bodybuilders, like this is the best thing to come to because you'll probably walk away with, 4 or 5 new faces and new friends that you'll stay connected with.
Yeah, and our goal is to take complicated topics and make them easy to understand and easy to digest. So, which is helpful for a seasoned competitor, people have competed in, 15, 20 shows, or people that have never competed before. A lot of times hearing information a different way can be really, really helpful. And none of us are so far gone through this to where we forget where we came from and we forget how hard it was to learn the basics. And a lot of things, the basics are people that have competed a lot still don't think about and consider. right? I know a lot of us probably have clients that have done things we just kind of put our hands in our face, be like, what? Like, why? Like things like really, really basic stuff that we've all learned in the past. But look, like a lot of things end up slipping through the cracks, especially if it's been a bit since you have competed.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've talked about it before, but the sport is always evolving, right? Like how it was 5 years ago is not necessarily how it is today. So, even if you've been doing this for a while, I feel like there's always little things you can learn every year.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's and then the biggest part for me, the takeaway I get every year is just the community aspect and
Yeah.
the people that come to this event, they end up becoming friends, and then you see them hanging out all year, doing shows together, traveling together, hanging out with us at shows. So it does really build that bond. And like you said, it's very hard sometimes to find people in your immediate proximity that are kind of share common interests. So it's really a fun event for that. I mean, shoot, this is how I met like people like Lane Norton years ago was, coming to some of these fantasy camps and things like that. So a lot of these people will become your close friends.
Yeah.
And
And
lastly, too, you don't have to be a part of Pro Physique. And you can be part of another team or you could compete by yourself. It doesn't matter to us. It doesn't. This is for everyone. And it's not one of those things either. If you come here, we try to convince you to come work with us. It's nothing like that either. So I don't want, this is not a sales pitch. It's not a timeshare event.
No.
It's nothing like that.
And it's not, and this is, I love this compliment that we've like, I know I've heard from countless people in the past that have come, like, it's not clicky either. I've heard some people say before that they'll go to an event and it just seems really clicky, like if it's hosted by a team. I wouldn't say like I don't feel like our group is clicky whatsoever. Like, you go and I mean, last year it was I think the last year's event was probably the best one we ever did, but I didn't feel like there was any clickiness. Like it's just very awesome, supportive group of people.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Jamaica does a wonderful job of like, creating some things that build that community from the outset, whether it's our dinner the first night there, the gathering the second night there, we do present presentations and also like training. When you train one-on-one with people, you get to know them because
Yeah.
Mhm.
you're talking between sets, you're pushing each other, you're having these discussions, and I'm telling you, like by the end of the day, people don't want to leave. Yeah,
No, it's always kind of sad coming home after these events. I always feel like the first day home, I'm just kind of like, oh, like, that post kind of
yeah.
event depression, if you so will. But yeah, as of right now, when this goes out, we do still have some tickets left, but not a lot. And we do have to cap it at a certain amount just for the facility space. And, I think we like to keep it a little bit more intimate too. We don't want it to get so big to the point where,
Well, and the more we can plan ahead, the better the event goes, right? The more
yeah,
we can
yeah.
expect, more that we can invest in, like, we can reach out to the sponsors and say this many people are coming. We can say this is the group. So we do some outreach prior to the event to improve it. And when I say we, I mean Jamaica.
Yes, yeah, no, Jamaica. I don't know if she's listening to this, but she is so amazing. Like she even texted me the other day about a couple questions she had just for feedback, for the upcoming event. But she goes above and beyond, and I'm really excited to see what she comes up with for this one.
Yep, yep. She's always making improvements to it. So, and that's in March. And by that time, we'll already have attended a couple of things like the Arnold, um, and then the Wasatch and Girl Power right after that. So, um, yeah, I think when we talk about plans for this year, a big part of that has to be what's going to transpire in the sport. How are things going to change once the new division, which was announced almost a year ago to the day, what was it like last week?
Yeah, I know I tagged you in a post, Paul, because I got the notification of when Fit Model was announced. I think it was announced on the 18th. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, almost a year
Okay.
ago, which is
Yeah.
crazy what has transpired since then.
I guess, I don't know. Did you guys expect it to go like it went, better or worse?
I, I mean, I honestly feel like it went exactly how I could have predicted, where it was kind of at the beginning of the year, like a little bit of a slower start. We didn't see as many competitors. And I also feel like there was a little bit of a variance in like what was rewarded earlier in the year versus the end of the year. And I don't think that has anything to do with like, oh, they changed the criteria. I think that just has every bit to do with the fact that I mean, there weren't as many athletes competing in shows early in the year, right? They can only reward what it shows up, right? So I feel like it went exactly how I thought it was going to go, with just getting bigger and bigger throughout the year, and with the look evolving a little bit. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I
Same.
mean, standard. I mean, it's a pretty common theme in the sport over the years. And if anything's consistent, that's consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think knowing the history of the bikini division helped because when you see the bikini division, when it gets introduced, be like the laughing stock of the bodybuilding world. Same with men's physique. Like it was literally like scoffed at. Like, oh, you're a bikini competitor. Oh, you're men's physique. It was, and now those divisions are very well respected and established. And so, but yeah, it was a joke at the beginning. Like people would literally leave when those divisions came on stage. They'd be like, "What is this?" Then they just walk out the door. Um, so I knew when Fit Model was introduced, there would be a period of, okay, this isn't bodybuilding anymore. The people that are, I don't know, I don't want to say haters, but they're pessimists around bodybuilding. They'll say things like, "Oh, this is just a money grab." Um, and I don't think they understand how business works. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't have people coming in the door and you have less
Yeah.
people coming, you have to change something. And that people don't
Yeah,
remember what bodybuilding was like before bikini and men's physique.
no, I agree with that because I remember a big thing at the beginning of the year that kind of made me a little annoyed and frustrated is when I would hear people say, oh, well, they're adding fit models just a money grab, another way for them to make money. And I'm like, well, you do realize this is a business. This isn't like a charity. And like there's nothing wrong with the people who put in the work behind the scenes. Like there's nothing wrong with them wanting to expand their business and, even profit more. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a business. And I feel like I've loved that it has like Fit Model, I truly has created a space for everybody in bodybuilding because we've talked about this before, but I feel like as coaches, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like last year before Fit Model was announced, it was difficult because it was like bikini was getting to that point where it was hard to have that discussion with athletes in terms of like, hey, okay, you want to compete, but we probably need to spend like 2, 3 years just growing before we even prep. Like that's a hard conversation to sometimes have with some athletes. So I feel like Fit Model has really created more space for people to get on stage a little bit earlier than they may have would have if they had to build for bikini, right? So I really like the opportunity it's opened in that avenue. And I've even had I've noticed a little bit of a trend in I've had a couple of inquiries recently with ladies who are into, I know like high rocks races are really popular right now, and like people that are into other things and they're like, I would love to try out Fit Model. And I do feel like Fit Model is one of those divisions you can almost sometimes get away with like doing other things while doing Fit Model, like high rocks races or, I don't know, running. Like I feel like you can kind of mesh those things in a way, whereas it's harder to do that with bikini. So
Yeah. I mean, that old saying, like, you evolve or you die, right? And that's pretty much how any business is, and bodybuilding is a business. If you want to go to shows that are well run, where you have good makeup crews, good tanning crews, you want Gilco or any of the good videographers there with the really good lighting and the good stage backdrops and a nice facility, those things don't just come. Like, they cost money to do. And you have to have competitors to be able to do that. And if you've ever been to a higher level NPC show, and then go to, let's say, some of the other organizations. Try to find a good steak shot from other organizations. You almost can't. You almost can't. Not to mention, the NPC has a full website, has almost every show and everyone's picture posted on it. So when we're looking at athletes, we can go pull up their pictures from years and years and years. It's a network of things they built over time. So if you want the sport to evolve, if you want the sport to be something other than just the most niche thing you can ever imagine, then things are going to need to be added, right? And when it comes to bikini and fit model, I think it gave, yeah, people who didn't want to compete or didn't want to look like bikini, it gave them that avenue, but it also gave people that just did not have the genetics or muscle in bikini a place to compete. So it gave a place that had a lot of competitors that really didn't have a road to a lot of things. It gave them an option that actually fits them. And I think that's beneficial because it keeps people involved in the sport. It keeps people motivated. And again, like if you've come to any of these shows and you see, these girls, backstage and then on stage, especially in the beginning or the end of the year, it absolutely evolves. And this division is going to continue to evolve.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I kind of foresaw this happening too, but I've just noticed like there were some people at the beginning of the year that were very like, nope, I'm doing bikini, not fit model is not even a thought for me. And then I feel like I've even had this discussion with several athletes like later in the year. I've had some of those same people, coming to me and they're like, I do think I kind of want to try out fit model, right? Like there's been some shockers with some people that have kind of swung in that 180 of like being kind of against fit model at the beginning of
Mhm.
the year to now like deciding, yeah, this division it's gonna grow and maybe it's more suited for me.
I mean, I'm going to bring up a funny example. I made a post early in the year about like fit model division and how it probably fits a lot of females' physiques better than bikini. And I caught a
Yeah.
lot of DMs and a lot of people had opinions on that. A lot of people. And it's funny because I would say about 95% of the girls saying fit model is just a vision for girls who don't work out and they were just hating on it. I would click on their profiles. They were competing competitors. And I was like, you don't have near the muscle for a bikini. You barely have it for fit model. And so it's interesting to see people get so stuck in these ruts, right? And it's like that tribalism of this is my life, this is what I do, this is who I am. And they put everything into that bucket without being able to look outside of it. And like you can't see the forest through the trees. So again, the post was about, hey, if you have a coach and they want to put you in the best position to be successful, this may be the best route for you. And to see the amount of people at the beginning of the year that just were immediately turned off from that was very surprising. And like I said, Lexi, a lot of them end up coming around towards the end.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the whole pushback earlier in the year, as I do still think that some people kind of thought of the division as a joke. Like, fit model first off with the name, and then they kind of thought about it as like, oh, anybody can do it, right? So I feel like that's where a lot of the pushback came from with certain athletes. And I think people are now understanding like it isn't just a division you can walk off the beach with, right? Like it takes work. And I think that some people are realizing that and realizing like it's not a joke like maybe they thought it was. And I think that's why we're seeing some more athletes come around as well.
Yeah, look, some girls can walk off the beach or off the street and walk in a show and win it. Some can. There's also some guys who can walk in off the beach, walk in and win a pro card in men's physique. There are freaks and genetic anomalies out there that have phenomenal structures and great muscle bellies. They exist, but it's not the majority. It's not.
Mhm. Yeah, agreed. But yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with how it's evolved this past year and just really excited to see as it continues to evolve and grow this upcoming year with the pro shows happening. So I think we'll see some good stuff.
I think that kind of
Well,
rolls into our topic for the day as well, doesn't it?
yeah,
What
let's
goal
talk about
setting?
goal setting for next year because
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's going to factor into a lot of people's goals.
I do too. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm having quite a few conversations with a lot of my like competitors this like between this week, next week, just kind of mapping out the year. And I don't know how you guys approach it, but I always tell my athletes, I think every competitor wants to have some sort of like roadmap, even if it's tentative, like for the year, right? Rather than just kind of
Mhm.
going into the year, having absolutely no idea of like, okay, maybe I compete this year, maybe I'm not. Like, I think every competitor appreciates a tentative roadmap. And I know, kind of how I frame it with my athletes when I talk to them is I always like to kind of know they're like, what is your big, like, overarching goal with competing, right? Is your goal that you want to turn pro? Is your goal that you want to, just win an overall at a regional show? Like, what's that big overarching goal? And I like to start with that first and then kind of backpedal and like work backwards in terms of, okay, what do we need to do to get to that point, right? Because sometimes, the journey is going to look a little bit different for somebody that maybe just wants to honestly compete at a regional show to have fun versus somebody who wants to turn pro, right? There may be a little bit of a different strategy and kind of roadmap that goes into that. So that's kind of how I like to structure goal setting for the year, like when it comes to competitors, and just kind of start with that big goal and then work our way backwards.
That's how you go set,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, now, I say that's how you goal set, and I think that's a good way to approach it. And that's how I approach it with the vast majority of people. I do have some clients that, we start with an initial goal and they want to keep growing that goal out, which I don't think there's any issue with that. But my normal comment is, hey, how about we get to goal one first before we start stacking goals on top of it? Let's see where we're sitting, and then if we can proceed, we can proceed.
Yeah, we got to start. You have to have the baby steps, right? Like we said, I think at the beginning, like we love the big lofty goals, but you also have to be realistic about, if you've never competed before and you're already thinking about like the Olympia or even, I mean, even national shows, right? It's like start first with like the baby steps. Start with the local show and then maybe choose a show that is still a regional show, but a bit of a bigger show. And then like you gotta baby step, yourself towards those bigger overarching goals.
I'm going to give you guys an example. Let me know how many times this has happened to you. You have a client that you know has a good amount of talent. They never competed before. They come, they're willing to do whatever it takes. They put in a ton of work for it. They say, I want to go pro in this. I want to be like a household name in this. And then they don't win their class at their first show, or maybe they get second in their class, or maybe even third, or maybe they do a show a little bit earlier. And you probably would have to be in the optimal place for it. Maybe the show runs a little bit longer than they expected it would. Maybe it's a longer day. Maybe they don't understand that the hair and makeup is going to be so early and the show runs late. All those factors that kind of kick into it. And afterwards, they're just incredibly disappointed, right? Incredibly disappointed. It's because their goals were way bigger than they should have been to start. Way bigger
Yeah.
than it should have been to start. Because if your goal is, I want to make it, I want to turn pro and make it to Olympia, and you've never competed before, and you go in and you place third in your class, and you look markedly 10 times better than you probably ever thought you would look in your entire life. But you realize that all that work you put in didn't get you the result that you wanted. It leads to a lot of disappointment.
Listen, I think from my perspective, the people that are the most successful in their sport, they might have the goal of doing this stuff, but they love the process of competing. The placements on the stage are just the result of them being talented and putting in work for time. Very rarely do you find somebody that goes, "Oh, I want to do this," but they haven't actually, like you said, they haven't actually done the day-to-day stuff. They haven't done the grind. They haven't suffered. They haven't had to sit backstage for 12 hours at a show. I mean, I've even had girls go to the Olympia and they didn't realize after prejudging their season was over and it was like this big letdown of like, oh, I don't get to go to finals. That's just it. I'm done at an expo at 9 in the morning or 10 in the morning on a Saturday in Las Vegas. It's a very, if you're not in it for the long haul because you truly love the process, it's yeah, there's going to be some days where you really question what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, where I always tell people don't have any expectations going into any show. And I don't say that from the standpoint of like, oh, I don't believe in somebody. I would never want it to come across as that. But I mean, I just know like you can't, if you have expectations and then the moment you go into a show and those expectations aren't reached, you're disappointed. You don't love, you probably don't enjoy the show day as much. You don't enjoy the process as much. So it's like, as hard as it can be, don't set expectations. You can have goals and aspirations, but don't create this narrative in your brain of what you feel like, the first show is going to be like. Just go in, no expectations. And, regardless of what happens, you're going to likely be a lot more satisfied with the end result if you just don't have those expectations leading you into it.
Pressure creates so much disappointment in people. Goals that are really big goals are there for a reason. And there's nothing wrong with having big goals, but they have to be realistic goals, right? They don't need to get in the way. My goal, my first show was not to get last place and
Yeah.
not embarrass myself. That was the goal in my first show. I never even considered going pro. I know after my first few shows, I had some people at gym be like, "Hey, you gonna win your pro card?" I was like, let's not get ahead of this already, people. Like I've done three shows." That was a
Right.
common way to look at it. Another thing I would
I feel
recommend
like
for a lot
that's
of
most people's first thought now is I want to get a pro card.
it is.
Oh yeah, it is. But what's funny is, when we did I think it was two podcast episodes ago, we talked about like what does it mean to act like a pro before becoming a pro. And and I love that people have big aspirations and like, yeah, most people that get into this sport, their goal is they want to turn pro. But I mean, let's be honest, and this is a little bit of a harsh kind of pill to swallow. There's a lot of people that say they want to be a pro and they do not act like a pro. It all starts with how you approach your time outside of prep, right? If you're somebody outside of prep, you're always goofing around, you're eating off plan all the time, you're drinking a ton of alcohol, you're, barely making it to the gym consistently, like that's not a pro how a pro acts. And like, you know what? That's fine if that's what you want to do, but you also have to realize you're going to have to adjust probably your expectations and your goals to match your efforts and your energy outside of prep.
Absolutely. I think another thing, kind of backtracking on what we're talking about setting goals and disappointments. One thing I do want to recommend to people is I've never recommended people do one show and have a bad show experience and saying, I hate this and never want to do it again. That's like if you went out on one date with a person and said, I never want to go out on another date again because you had a bad experience with one human being. All shows are run different. Some shows are ran great, some are ran like dog crap. Some promoters are great, some promoters aren't as great. Some areas of states put on better shows than other areas of states. Some expediters backstage are kind of asses, and some of them are some of the best people you'll ever meet in your entire life. It really just depends, and people are going to be people. So never make your judgment on an entire dream or situation based off your first experience. I don't think that's a good way to go about it either.
I totally agree because I even think if your first show is like, an amazing show, let's for example, we'll use the show we always talk about that we love, Republic of Texas, right? Sometimes even the essence of it being your first show, you're more nervous, you're more anxious, like you perceive things differently. So and this can kind of go into goal setting. Like if you are somebody planning to compete in the upcoming new year, like I think we can all agree it's, if you have the means to do so, do more than one show. Generally speaking, that first show is going to be, I don't want to say first show, worst show, but like the second show is always going to be better. You're going to probably feel a little bit less nervous. You're going to improve your package. And, again, it's nice to always get the opportunity as well to compete against a different pool and a group of athletes and a different judge. So, if you're setting goals for the new year and you want to compete, if you can do more than one show, highly recommend it.
Yeah, my
Listen,
first, sorry
I
about
was gonna
that.
say I love talking to your coach about making the show that you're gonna do more than just about getting on the stage. That's one of the great things about, traveling to so many shows that we get to go to is we really get to put our clients at shows where we know they're gonna have a good experience. I've had people end competing because of a bad show.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I've had some good shows in the past that used to be good, and I put athletes in that show, and things changed with those promoters, and they did not being end up being good. So things can then change. I know people are locked in. A lot of people are locked on regional, right? And for a lot of people's first shows, they don't want to fly to a show for a first show, which I completely understand. I don't recommend that either for the most part. If you could do one a little bit locally, the better it will be. But I can tell you, me personally, I didn't like my first show experience was with another organization and it was horrible, like run horrible. And I never wanted to possibly do it again, except a guy who was backstage doing the tanning said, hey, maybe you should go do this show here in a few weeks. And I did that one. And unfortunately, it was in Georgia, which at that time did not have the best promoters. Things have changed a little bit now, but back then they were not good. So my first two shows were a bad experience. I refused to ever do it again until I met my ex, and who was big into competing, and she taught me doing some shows, and I had really good experiences with those, and it changed my whole outlook on it. So, if it wasn't for that opportunity, I probably would have competed after the first two show experiences I had.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know a question I get a lot. I mean, I get DMs about this all the time of like, for people that listen and they hear us talk about like, good shows, and people are like, well, how do I know if a show is a good show, right? And unfortunately, like this is one of those things that you just kind of learn over time. Like the more, like us as coaches, we've attended enough shows, we've followed these shows, we've had enough athletes in certain shows, like where you kind of know what shows are run really well, what shows maybe aren't. And so, I recommend if you're curious about like what is a quote unquote good show, have that discussion with your coach. Like what is your definition of a good show too? Like, do you want a show that's a big show where it's promoters are going all out for the athletes, or do you want a show that's maybe a little bit smaller that runs quicker? I think it depends on like how do you define a good show, but having that discussion with your coach, and that can ultimately help with leading into maybe what some of the shows that you guys pick out for the year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess you know what? Let's probably put that on the hopper for an entire podcast. What makes a good competition? Because I'm like in my brain,
Yeah,
I'm like, I could run on this and we could just completely change the focus of this podcast. But
Yeah, true.
for
um,
sure.
we could maybe create a list of some of our favorite shows and why they are great shows. Um, and yeah,
That'd
there's
be a
so
great
many
idea.
there's so
I
many reasons.
I like that idea a lot. Yeah, I love that idea. Obviously, it would be we would have a little bit of our personal bias in it, but like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I like the idea of doing an episode on that.
Well, when you're the most experienced coaches, like, because when we have consults with people, one of the most common things I hear is like, oh, I have a coach, they're great, but they don't leave the gym. They don't go to shows. They don't answer emails on the weekend.
Yeah.
There's a but in there, and they got them to their stage their first time, and then they realize like, oh, there's something missing.
Yep.
There's a next level to this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm curious too, because we've talked thus far about okay, goal setting when it comes to picking out shows and competing, but I'm curious how you guys like to approach like an upcoming year with clients that, because I mean, we all have them, clients that maybe have decided that they want to take the full year to grow. And some people kind of look at that as being a little bit more like quote unquote boring because oh, you're not stepping on stage. But I'm curious how you guys approach like goal setting with those athletes. Like if you have an athlete going into 2026 and you guys both know they're going to spend the whole entire year growing, how do you go about goal setting with them? Because I feel like those people almost need more goals to kind of keep them driven and focused. So I'm curious how
When
you
you're
guys do that.
not focused on the stage, the goal setting is much more challenging because there's no visual changes, very minimal at least. So my two favorite things are to focus on our metabolic capacity, like our calorie to weight ratio. I love to look at that. I also love to set them up on training programs where I'm testing a max every 4 to 6 weeks, usually 6 weeks, and then putting on a training block where at the end of the 6 weeks, let's say they did a hip thrust for 5 reps at 300 pounds. At the end of the 6 weeks, when they go to test their new max at 315, they get 8 instead of 5. Oh
Yep.
wow, okay, now we know there is some marked progress because especially with smaller females, you're not going to see these huge changes in the way you look in an improvement season. It's not until you diet down.
Yep.
Guys, yeah, and but with women, it's really like they start dieting the next season and they go, "Oh man, this is new."
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big part of why it's so hard to set goals in an off season is you're right. Like you're not seeing really a ton of visual changes week to week, nor should you. I mean, if you're building muscle, you're not gonna notice every week, like, oh, look at this new line, look at this like new shape. Like that's doesn't happen that quickly. And I feel like, that this is really when it tests an athlete's capacity to fall in love with the process, not just the destination. And I know something that I like to focus on with my athletes in an extended growing season is, of course, strength goals, but I like to sometimes encourage, like, how can we improve in every area of your life? Not just bodybuilding you, but like, how can you improve in other areas of your life that you want to improve? I've had clients before tell me that, they want to really focus on establishing a healthy level of balance when it comes to their bodybuilding lifestyle, but also still being able to be present with their family, being able to go on date nights with their husband. I've also had some people that, they'll share personal career goals with me, right? So I like to kind of take a long extended improvement season to not only improve upon their bodybuilding selves, but like give them some other goals outside of bodybuilding that they can improve upon as well, improving kind of every aspect of your life at that point.
Yeah. I everyone's goals that I set up for them are a little bit different. As most you probably know, I'm big on my clients doing training critiques, so I really focus on a lot of that in the off season, especially in parts that need heavy improvement. So if people need some more lats, which a lot of girls do to create more shape in their front pose in whatever division that they do. They need more lats. They do to create that shape. And getting them to send videos of specific movements or programming their training for those specific movements and doing a lot of that type of work, I think is really helpful. For clients that have that pretty knocked down and form is pretty much spot on, then we will work on similar what Paul said on strength goals, right? A lot of girls will say, hey, like we're going to do in 8 weeks, we're going to do a hip thrust goal. I want you to pretty much set, 8 reps or 6 reps here. Let's see what we get with full lockout. And then let's see where we are in, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks. And what's interesting to see is a lot of that we get to work on other things. Like, yeah, they're increasing on weight, but they're not fully locking out at the top. There's a lot of gaps that end up happening. So while it ends up starting to be a strength goal, it more turns into a how can we train heavy and learn how to push ourselves at a good rate along the way. And that ends up helping making people improve so much. And to be able to fill in their gaps, right? Like if a lot of girls need more like glute medius, upper outer glute, it's like, hey, well, let's switch our programming around to really attack that type of thing. I want to see videos based on those. And then we're going to really just focus on that body part. What physical change are we seeing in that body part? Things like that, I think, are helpful for people. Along the way, right? And I also think it's very difficult to have someone in a full growing season without some sort of like metabolic reset, like a small mini cut or something like that to help keep them motivated. But again, some
Yeah.
people don't need that. Some people do need that. Some people we need
Right.
to do that because they're eating got a little bit out of control. We need to pull them back a little bit, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, keeping like those phases in there, I think are helpful.
I think so too. And I've even found, I've changed my perception or my opinion on mini cuts over the past years too, because I actually feel like too, there can be, I mean, we all have those athletes that in the midst of a growing season, like they have to eat a lot of food to grow. And I almost feel like sometimes mini cuts, like I'm talking a quick, like little 4 to 6 week phase where
Mhm.
we just pull back food for the sheer purpose of like giving their digestion a little bit of a break. I feel like that can be advantageous because I mean, this doesn't happen for everybody, but I know I've had athletes before, eating a ton of food and, we do a little bit of a mini cut, we pull food down and they're like, oh my God, I just feel so good. It feels good to feel a little bit of hunger again, right? So
Yeah.
there can be, a purpose for a mini cut in that reason too, not just from the aesthetics reason. But I agree with you, Evan. I think sometimes having those little phases intermingled in there can definitely be helpful for specific people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like it is harder sometimes to set those goals when you're not, stepping on stage because I feel like that's where we always think about as goal setting, as athletes. But, I know another goal that I've had a couple of athletes that have told me that they have for themselves, like in the midst of a long growing season is, and this has nothing to do with training, but I've had some people tell me they're like, I want to try to put myself out there more and be more involved in the sport of bodybuilding, like
Mhm.
through going to more shows, maybe volunteering at shows, being a trophy girl, maybe going to more seminars. And I think like I love that goal because ultimately that generally makes you just fall more in love with the sport overall.
It helps keep stay connected to it
Yeah.
as well. Another thing, that's why we put on a lot of events at Pro Physique, right? To be able to bring people in and keep them connected with it. You get really disconnected and you feel like you end up staying in a bubble a lot of times in an off season.
I can't
But
get
again,
away from
if we pull fully back to the whole goal setting part of it, it's important to know if your goals are big is to increase placements, is if it's to really improve body parts, if it's to move up to a national level or then move up to a pro card level or move up to Olympia level, whatever that is, your your goal setting in the off season should be there because that's what's going to help you get to that big goal. It's not going to be an habitual diet phase. It's not going to get you there.
Yeah, the hard part about bodybuilding is that it's boring, right? Like we're not going to go to the gym every day excited and pumped. If anything, that happens more in prep, in my opinion. It's more
Oh yeah.
like I get so excited to go to the gym when the closer I get to stage. But that's not when the real beneficial work is done. It's when you are in the middle of your improvement season and you don't skip that meal, so you hit your protein goal for the day. When you don't skip that workout because you're tired, um, and you don't see the changes, and you're lifting the same weights you were last week, but you keep showing up. That's when I find that that muscle really starts to stick around the longer you have it. And it's what, over the course of, my first competition, I remember how motivated I was for that whole prep. And when the show ended, I did not set that next goal. And like you said, Lexi, this is the thing that I do now with all my competitors. I reverse engineer from the next goal back to where we're at. Because
Yep.
when you tell somebody like, hey, we're going to get on stage, let's say, I just had someone get off stage. Let's say, okay, we're going to do this same show next December. That feels like an eternity, like nothing matters. But if I say to you, okay, we've got 24 weeks to build and then a 20-week prep, that all of a sudden is like, oh, we only have 24 weeks to put on muscle before we start a prep. It starts to become very real. So when you start to, analyze like how many times do you hear an athlete go, I can't believe the show's already here. It seems like, it was a year and a half ago that I was on stage, but it feels like it got here so quick. The time passes quick. And if you're not just in the routine of eating, training, recovering, eating, training, recovering, you're going to be starting prep and you're going to be like, oh man, I did not do what I wanted to do. I am not in the place that I wanted to be. You should not be using prep to fix your routine.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. And, and there are people out there that do that. And I'll be honest, those people are generally the people that look the same every damn time they step on stage. Like the people that just like use prep as like, okay, this is really gonna lock me in and get me into a routine. Like I get that, but also like you're gonna probably just look the same, find yourself in the cycle of looking the same every time you step on stage, right? And and you said it best, Paul, like bodybuilding is a boring sport when you think about it. But it's, it's all about sometimes, especially if you're taking like a year off to just grow, it's about finding enjoyment in the monotony, right? Like where can you find enjoyment in the monotony? And, I know some things I've done in long building seasons to kind of keep that enjoyment of the monotony going is, there'll be times I'll try out new gyms. Maybe I get a membership to a new gym just for a change of atmosphere. Maybe I, start working out with a training buddy once a week, or maybe I try, incorporating like a yoga class into my week to also help to enhance my training. So sometimes you have to just kind of challenge yourself. Like, how can you find a little bit more enjoyment in that monotony? And that can kind of trick your brain into making you feel like you're doing something new when you're really not.
Yeah, and look, in off seasons, we all know when you get locked into a prep, you sacrifice a lot of other things in your life. You sacrifice a lot of social times. You sacrifice going out to eat with your friends and family. You sacrifice trips a lot of times. You sacrifice vacations. You sacrifice a lot. And a lot of times when you're in an off season or when you go into an off season, those other things start to take some priority as they should. And I think sometimes in that people lose the structure that they had, right? Doing it, like making sure they get up and go to the gym, making sure they go to bed a little bit earlier. They're like, it's not a big deal. If I get up a little bit earlier tomorrow or later tomorrow, it's not a big deal. A lot of times it ends up people not doing their cardio, not going to the gym, right? Or being tired because of their choices the night before. So it's about trying to figure out what that balance is, and that can be really difficult. And I'm sure we've all run into that where you basically have it two ways for a lot of people, especially initially, to where either it's an excuse for everything why they can't do it, or it's they are so type A personality they still sacrifice everything else to make sure they get in, their cardio, their training, and their food. And it's finding what that balance is between that, especially if it's in a full year of growing. Not we're going to compete 12 months from now, but we're going to take a full 12 months of growing and then go into a prep. That is a whole lot longer of a time than it is competing in a 365-day period.
Yeah, and that's, one of the things I really love. Well, one of the many things I love about like our check-in portal too is I love when clients like they can put their specific goal, whether it's their show date or I mean, I've even had clients like put like countdowns to silly little things, but like I love how our check-in portal at the top, depending on the goal, like it gives a countdown too. Because I mean, gosh, I have some girls that are getting on stage in April, May, and like right now that kind of seems like it's far out, but then when you see the week countdown and you're like, oh crap, it's like 17 weeks out, right? It's like, oh damn, it kind of puts things into perspective there too. So sometimes just having that like that countdown, whether it's to a show or just I don't know, even like a countdown to just whatever. Like I think that can kind of help to keep things exciting as well.
Then I utilize a lot of Google Sheets with my athletes. They don't have to use them, but I think I only have one client that doesn't use it out of all my clients. Every other one likes it. And the left side of it is kind of like a roadmap, and the right side is their information they fill in. So every time they go in and that day they click, they know how many days we are out from a goal. It's a constant countdown from that goal. And then we have, okay, this is a build phase, and this is going to be a prep phase, and this is probably going to be our cleanup phase. So they can kind of see where that's going throughout the entire process, which helps, right? Because a lot of times you're like, oh man, I have a lot of days. I have 6 months until the show. Well, that's true, but you also only have another 5 weeks of a building phase in here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we can all attest to this, but like it goes by so quick. Like bodybuilding time, I feel like goes by so quick. You can sit there and think like, oh, I'm in a 20-week prep, and like that sounds like such a long time, but it flies by. And even, you know what, taking a full year off to grow, in the grand scheme of things, it sounds like that's going to be forever and a day, but it goes by so quickly. I have an athlete that I'm working with right now, and she last time she competed was back in It was the Nashville Fit Show last year, right? And I remember, her and I had the discussion when she came off stage that she was going to take all of this year to just not prep and just to grow. And I remember her words at the time. She's like, that's it's going to be a long time. And then here we are, almost getting ready to start prep a year later. And she's like, whoa, that flew by. Like that went a lot quicker than I initially thought.
Yep, it
Years
goes
can
by real
pass.
fast.
Years can pass. But to keep you locked in, one of my tricks is stay involved. You
Yeah.
mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there are there are very few gyms that you go to that motivate you to compete. Usually that comes from an extrinsic kind of motivator. There are a few great gyms where it's like bodybuilding centric, where you get that, you remember we're in the gym in San Diego, SD, you call it.
Oh, I love
Um,
that gym.
Now
Yes.
that gym, like you walk in and you're like, even if you've never heard of competing and you go to that gym, you're going to be like, wait, I want to look like these people. They have it plastered on the walls from the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, even the current, competitors. You get that vibe. But most gyms, if you're going to your commercial gyms, it's going to be very muted. The music's not going to be very motivating. The pictures on the wall, there's going to be some phrases like, go one more or something like this. But that's why, like, there's almost, I can predict it to a T. When the first competition of the season happens, which is usually the Arnold, I get so many messages of former clients, Coach, I'm ready. I saw some pictures and video. I'm ready to come back. And so attending shows, watching shows, going to see your friends compete. How many of us have, like, literally I had lunch with my client this weekend, and her friend came and she was like, man, I really think I want to do this. Can we set up a consult? I was like, absolutely. I think that kind of visualization helps remind you what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. And I can think over the past years, there's been several instances where, I don't really maybe have a reason to attend a certain local show or a certain local seminar, and sometimes I'll like kind of almost try to talk myself out of it before I go, but then I end up going. And then I leave and I'm always like, gosh, I'm so happy I went. Like you just feel like that fire's relit every time you go to a show or a seminar, even if you have no reason to go, right? Like I've never regretted going to something like that. Something else I like to sometimes like trick, and not that this is like tricking my clients, but something else that I think can be very helpful when it comes to goal setting is, because a lot of bodybuilding goals are these goals that are going to probably take months and months, sometimes years to achieve, right? So I like to encourage my clients like every month to set like 1 to 2, maybe 3 micro goals in the midst of like each month. So maybe, one of their micro goals for the month of January may be to, hip thrust 300 pounds for 8 reps. I don't know. Maybe that's one of their micro goals. And then maybe another micro goal is, they want to confidently be able to hit their macros, to a T every day of the month. Like I'm just throwing out random examples, but I'll try to encourage my clients to set little micro goals every month. And you can even take it one step further too and create like a little reward for yourself if you achieve those micro goals, like some positive reinforcement. Maybe it's like, okay, if I achieve X, Y, and Z this month, I'll get myself those new pair of tennis shoes that I've been eyeing up, or I'll buy that new, gym activewear set that I've been wanting. So sometimes I've done that with some of my clients. It just kind of, keeps things a little bit more fun as well.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Lexi. It's helpful to be able to lay it out there in front of them, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I think is helpful. And a lot of times things get lost in that too, because we do so much on audio visual feedback, right? So everything we send is a visual along, or an audio and a visual along with it. But I do think there's a lot of value in also putting some written words down on there as well, as far as their plan is, and especially things that we want to work on, recommendations from them, so they can see in the video, then obviously have it written down there in front of them as well. It also tells you a lot about how motivated a client is, because if you ask for certain things week after week after week and they're just ignored, then you kind of know how motivated are they, or are they just disorganized, right? So a lot of times I'll bring up, like, I love my notes, like Apple Notes. I use an iMac, I use a MacBook, and I use an iPhone. So if I have questions, things like that I want to remember, I'll open a note, I'll make a note down on it. So I know next time I talk to that person, I need to check in, whatever it is, I know I have that information there. So I know what I need to respond to. It's about setting up those processes a lot of times. So yeah, I think little micro goals before big goals are helpful. And a lot of times to be able to achieve those goals, you need processes to be able to make sure those stay on the front of your mind because everyone's got a lot of stuff going on.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I'm glad you bring up that idea of like process goals because that's another thing, I feel like going into the new year, so many people are setting these finite goals, which are great, but I always tell people set habit goals as well, right? Like, like we'll use just a random like Gen Pop goal of like, okay, I want to lose weight, right? Like that's a great goal, but if you don't set your habits and your systems in place for how you're going to achieve that first, how are you going to reach that goal, right? So, like, if your goal is, maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I kind of potentially want to compete, right? Well, set some systems in place first that are going to allow you to thrive with that goal, right? If you're not already tracking your food, maybe that's a system that you put in place first. Maybe that's, your first goal, start there. But I think it's really important to have these like habit goals and put these systems in place. Another example is, okay, if your goal is, I want to get better at my sleep. Okay, that's great. But what systems are you going to put in place to achieve that goal, right? So I think it's important going into the new year to like have these big goals, but also make sure you have the habit goals in place, the system goals in place, because those are going to be the things that ultimately allow you to achieve that bigger goal at the end, at the end of it.
Yeah. I mean, how many, what, it's just, it's wild to me how people think bodybuilding is going to be different than anything else in life. How do you just decide you want to be successful in work without any sort of structure in your job or in your relationships or in anything, in anything? Um, People in any other sport just don't say, hey, I want to get to this goal, but I'm not going to do 90% of what's required to get there. Only in
Right.
this sport does I feel like that's when people think they can, because it takes what a lot of people think is a hobby or something healthy, like just eating, lifting weights and eating healthy, and turning it into something else. A lot of people just think if I can do this a little bit better, it gets me where I want to go here. But that's not the case with it.
Yeah. I think some people are still sometimes under the impression like, oh, I'll be the rarity. I'll be the unicorn. Like, I know I should have this, and this in place first, but like, I'll be the rarity. I'll be able to achieve my goal without that stuff in place. I don't know. I think some people sometimes are still in that mindset. And that's why they don't set those habit goals or those systems in place first. But I don't know.
I think, part of it comes down to you should, this is something, we can have a healthy debate on because I think me and Evan might see this one a little bit differently, but I feel people should compete early on in the process. I don't feel like they should
Mhm.
wait years to compete because the skills you learn in your first prep are what allow you to get better at bodybuilding. I always say people's best progress they're ever going to make in bodybuilding is going to be the year after their first show because they
Yeah.
spent this time learning how to meal prep, how to prioritize their training, how to train with intensity, how to grind. And then when the show is over, you pull back on the grinding part and you keep the process in place where you know how to meal prep, you know what your nutrition should look like, you know what your intensity in the gym should look like. You also visualize every day in the gym getting back on stage so you get that extra set, you don't leave the gym early, you don't miss a workout, you don't skip protein, and you're a better version of that so that the next time you prep, the whole prep you were visualizing it. And I know some people think like, oh, I just want to wait until I can win an overall. I just want to wait till I can get a pro card for my first prep. You might not even like stage. I've
Yeah.
had people that love the process, hate the hate the show day, hate the tan, hate the posing. They just like to get shredded. Um, they like the discipline, almost like, you said something about like high rocks, some of those other forms of, fitness goals can be great for people that, how many people have heard, oh, I don't want to wear the little trunks. I promise you,
I,
by the time you get to stage, that's the last thing on your mind. You're so
yeah.
excited to wear those. You're like, let me show
Yeah.
off my upper quad separation.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think with the high rocks thing too, that's a little bit separated because it's something that you can just train hard for and go do. You don't have to have the nutrition in a perfect space. All that stuff does have to be there. But actually, Paul, I 100% agree with you. I tell that to the vast majority of my clients is, how about we just get on stage first And so you
Yes.
can understand the process. Then, if this is something that you really enjoy, then let's get feedback. And of course, and let's do what we need to do to get to that next level on things. Because a lot of people love to train, a lot of people eat a lot of food, but a lot of people don't like to diet hard, right? And being able to understand kind of what that takes, I think is helpful. But also, this comes that caveat of going into that show with no expectations on a placing.
Yeah.
No expectations on placing. It's to learn the process, to be able to learn to what's involved with this. Because if you really want to be good at this, then there's a lot of value in that. That's why I do think there's some value in people going to national shows if they financially able to do it, and if it's not going to throw off a whole off season to do it, even if their placings aren't going to be that great. I think there's value in that because they get to see what that looks like. And they get to stand to next to people that are on that level. So even if they aren't fully ready for it, I think there's some value in going to it to be able to, again, number one, you're going to feel, most people can feel like, you know what, I can do this. Like they're not that far off from me. And that can be really motivating. But on other times, it can go there and be like, oh shit, I got a lot of work to do. Right. So I do think
Absolutely.
there's value in putting yourselves in positions where winning or winning a or getting first calls, whatever that is not the primary goal if your goals are on the bigger side.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think, I do want to preface by saying, and I think we can all agree, like, we're never as coaches going to put somebody on stage if they don't look like they're going to belong. Like, one of
No.
my promises to all of my clients is I always say, like, I can't ever, and none of us, we never, we can promise a certain placing, but I will promise you, I will not let you step on stage if you don't look like you belong, right? But
Yep.
yeah, I agree with everything that you guys just said about maybe getting on stage a little bit earlier on in the process. Honestly, for the biggest thing to see if you like it, right? But I can think of so many of my clients this past year that have gotten on stage for the first time, and flash forward to now, and they look back and they're like, okay, that wasn't my well, what I feel like I could bring as my best, but like they're way more motivated now that they've gotten on stage. They can
Mhm.
visualize what it feels like. They know what the process is like, and they're more motivated and more excited to improve now that they have had the experience of getting on stage and just feeling what it feels like, right? Like, and I do feel like there are, you do have those athletes sometimes where they want to compete, but like they never feel ready, right? It's almost like as a coach, you have to tell them, hey, we just got to get you on stage. Like, let's see how you stack up next to the other competitors. Because there are some people that, they would stay in a building season for 3, 4, 5 years if you let them, right? Because they'll never feel ready. So I think getting on stage earlier in the process definitely can be advantageous. And I think that's just another pro as to why like Fit Model is so great because it was harder to do that a year or two ago when with bikini, right? Can't always put just an athlete that is really new on stage and expect them to like compare well in bikini. But with Fit Model, it's that perfect kind of stepping stone into the sport.
Yeah, look, none of us will put someone on stage that's not in shape, right? None of us would do that. That's not a good feeling. Nobody wants to be like or be on a position like that on stage. It's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I have three goals for every, especially for females specifically. I have three goals every time I work with someone that's newer to the competitive scene. Number one, it's that they did something really hard mentally and physically, and they grew in both areas because of prep. Number two, they feel like they belong up there. They can look around and be like, okay, yeah, I've got some improvements to do, but you know what? Like, I belong up here. I don't feel out of place. You never want to be a person that walks in and me like, no way, go all the way to the outside, right? That is not a great feeling, was kind of what we were talking about before. And number three, that's they feel beautiful up there. If you can do all three of those things, then placings aren't as important, right? Because that the whole part of the most important part about bodybuilding, why I think that competing can be valuable for a lot of people is that it not the physical growth that happens throughout the process, but the mental growth and the stick to itiveness, the trust you build in yourself, the confidence you build in yourself, because you've done it. You've done hard things. You've done things that you don't want to do, things that your entire body and mind are telling you you absolutely should not do this, yet you still do it anyways. That is a very valuable skill that very few people get outside of something like this.
Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you guys how many times I've had people, and I mean, I will go to the grave saying this about myself personally, like doing the hard stuff in a bodybuilding prep, it just gives you so much more confidence in out like in things outside of bodybuilding too,
Mhm.
right? Like you just there's that empowerment of going through a prep, making it through, and like that can bleed very positively into discipline and other facets of your life, whether it's career stuff, relationships, whatever it may be. I feel like it just has that domino effect on everything else in your life if you let it. Yeah.
Beautiful
Um,
thing. I always tell people whenever someone's like, "Oh, I don't know, bodybuilding's not very healthy, is it?" I'm like, "Listen, it's the healthiest thing I ever did for myself."
you know,
Physically, and people only look at like they think of things as like, "Oh, but you're really lean." Yeah, for a couple weeks. And then you get on stage and you get off. But the habits that you build, the confidence that you build in yourself, and just the capacity that you learn of like, oh, I can achieve this goal through this process applies to everything else in your life. And so it's not just about like, yeah, there are days where you're tired, but you're not unhealthy. Okay, you're
yeah.
not dying of starvation. You know, you're pushing your body to its limits, you're pushing your mind to its limits, but that stress has such a profound positive impact on the rest of your life.
Mhm.
It
That
sure
yeah.
does.
It also teaches you how to navigate difficult things in relationships with friends, family, work situations.
Yeah.
It forces you to learn these things. And so when things happen that are out of your control in work, relationships, parents, friends, family, all that stuff, you typically can handle them way better because you
Oh,
put
yeah.
yourself in such a stressed situation on your own, of your own accord.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. I mean, it forces you to have tough conversations too, sometimes with those in your life who aren't bodybuilders. And yeah, I just feel like it's just, yeah, it's an extreme sport. It gets, yeah, we can say it. I wouldn't say it's healthy at the very end going on a stage, but like that's a temporary push, right? I think there can be so many benefits if you do prep in the right way, to other areas of your life. And I also feel like the sport of bodybuilding really creates this like level of self-awareness that a lot of people don't have before they start the sport, right? Like, sometimes I'll get a very new athlete and the first couple of weeks when they check in, like they're so reactive towards when the scale goes up and down. Like they just assume. And I guess, I feel like a lot of people, this is what they assume when they see that scale go up and down. They don't think of it as a normal fluctuation. The scale goes up and they're like, oh, I gained body fat. Whereas like one of my favorite things is being able to teach an athlete that level of self-awareness to understand, okay, oh, you know what, your weight did go up today, but like also you barely got any sleep last night, you're super sore from training the day before, so like that's why your weight went up, right? So like I feel like bodybuilding, it instills that self-awareness that I think can be very healthy for people as well.
Yeah. One thing I think this might be a little controversial. I'd actually like to get your opinions on this. So, Lexi, you said and a lot of people agree with this, that when you get on stage, it's not the healthiest. Um, I think for the vast majority of competitors that get on stage, especially earlier on in the career, it's not an unhealthy place to be. Most competitors, like when people say bodybuilding is not healthy, when you can't maintain this level of leanness, you're talking about higher level competitors. You're talking about higher level national athletes or, standouts at a regional show that are way above and beyond. I think the vast majority of us, when we go to most shows and we look at bikini girls and fit model girls, they aren't to a point to where it's unhealthy. They could probably get considerably leaner to fit the
Oh, I
division
think with
better
Fit Model, that's a sustainable year-round look
year
for most
round.
Yeah,
girls. Yeah,
I think it
Yes.
it's
definitely
gotten to the
depends on
point
the
where it is
division.
no longer the case. But even
Not at
bikini,
the high level. No.
no.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I feel like everybody's prep is different. And honestly, I find that a lot of people, their first preps, like not all the time, but like first preps for a lot of people, especially if they're very young, right? You don't have to push them as hard to get stage lean. But yeah, I think fit model is definitely not to say it's easy, but I think it's the healthiest out of all divisions. But I mean bikini competitors at the very end of prep that are doing, an hour cardio in the morning, an hour at night. Like, is that the epitome of health? No.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
it's temporary, right? But I think fit model absolutely is one of the
But what are other
healthiest.
people
yeah.
doing on a weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
at an EDM festival taking Molly and, for 2 days not sleeping. So
Yeah.
like
yeah. When I talk about unhealthy, I'm not talking about the effort that's put into it. I'm more talking about their body fat levels.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
okay,
amount
okay.
of females I see that compete, especially on social media, and they're like, "This isn't sustainable. Like being this lean, like this isn't something I can sustain." And a lot of girls I get on calls with, they'll seem like, "I know I can't stay lean this all this time or like this year round." And I'll say, I understand where that thought process comes from because you hear that all the time,
Right.
but you needed to be like 10 pounds leaner for this show. Like this,
Right.
where you're at right now, is
Yeah.
probably where we want to be in an off season if your
Right.
goal is to be all the way stage lean. So people
Yeah.
hear these things and they just think it applies to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, you bring up a good point, Paul, about like what are other people doing on the weekends? Because I know I've had to keep my mouth shut a time or two around like I've had some extended family before, like try to, you know, put their opinion in on bodybuilding. And, you know, I don't say this out loud, but they're also the same people that, you know, they're having multiple alcoholic beverages every night. And it's like, well, that's not any healthier. Of course, I don't say that because that would probably, you know, bring up a whole slew of conflict. But like, I mean, that is a good
It's
point.
much more socially acceptable to be at the bar on
Yeah,
Friday night on your fourth, margarita than it is to be taking a pre-workout and deadlifting.
I know. Yeah, or heaven forbid, I don't know. I laugh when I think about this because I don't overdo energy drinks by any means, but like I'll, you know, have an energy drink sometimes. And I just remember a couple years ago, one of my cousins was, yeah, Evan has one, was trying to fight me about energy drinks and like them being so bad for you. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, but like, what about those 5 beers you had last night, or maybe not five, but like, it's just, yeah, it's funny. It's funny. There's
Mm,
extremes to everything, and I feel like bodybuilders, the vast majority of us are far healthier than most people, just with our
the
habits.
amount of times I hear this from Gen Pop people, why do you have the energy? You know that's horrible for you. I go, really? Why? Well, I read somewhere that it's bad for him. Like, really? Where? What, like, what's bad about it? Well, it has a bunch of fake stuff in there. Oh, have you looked at an ingredients label on 99% of the garbage that's made in this country? Like,
Literally,
you can't have anything then if that's your staple. You better be going to local farmers markets and getting your food directly from a farm. Because if you
right?
are not doing that, then it's got a bunch of added crap in it. Like it just
It's
does.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And I've even had same cousins argue with me about diet soda. And then I was like, and I did the same thing. I was like, well, okay, like what are you know, send me what are you seeing that, you know, send me the studies. Let me read through them. And they sent me like this generic like PubMed just article. And I'm like, I think I went to like Lane Norton's page and sent them a video that he made about diet soda. But yeah, it's funny. I just feel like people have this stereotype and stigma around bodybuilding. And like for those people that aren't in the sport, they, you know, I think when they see us living the way we're living, it sometimes stems an insecurity within their own selves, like knowing that they
Agree.
could probably be paying better attention to or taking better care of themselves. So they just try to like pick us apart or put us down to just make
I got an
us better.
idea.
Yeah.
Here's how we show the benefits of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
This year, when they have the women's conference in Orlando, let's take a video of what everyone looks like in that room, and let's go to another conference for
Any
pharmaceutical
one of them.
sales, for alcohol sales, for grocery store. Let's go to any seminar, comic book seminar. I don't care. Any group of people that have a common interest, and show me a better body composition and a better life expectancy.
Amen to that.
Maybe tennis players. I've heard tennis players are like longer, because it's like a very, but like who is in better health than someone that bodybuilds year round?
Right.
Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah, so there are unhealthy parts about it, especially if PEDs are involved, especially at high levels. Yeah, I mean, you can cause issues. I think that's more of an issue in men than
That's
it comes to the women's side of
0.01% of the
things.
sport. Even when you
It's
go
almost
to
nothing.
untested shows, Evan, the amount of people that are natural is very high.
Oh, I know, and it's
People
in
think that's the first step. That is the extension of
yeah.
the sport.
Most health issues that come from the sport are due to water manipulation and sodium imbalances and things like that. That's where the vast majority of the horror stories you hear come from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like I know we're kind of going off on like a tangent, but any other like thoughts that you guys have on just this topic to kind of wrap it up about goal setting?
I got a good one. Talk to your coach if you have goals. I've had some clients reach out with goal changes this year and say, "Hey, I need you to tell me," and because they know I already will tell them if I what I think about it. Um, and shockingly, some of them like, "No, I think that's fine. I think we can do that." Or sometimes it's like, "Hey, why don't we pull the governor back here a little bit and maybe think about this a little bit down the line." If you have goals and you work with a coach and you trust your coach's opinion, then be honest and ask them about it. Just ask them, right? And say, "Hey, do you think this is a realistic goal? I need you to just tell me." They should be able to tell you that, right? They should be able to tell you that. Also, another thing I want to bring in with the goal setting on there is I had a client that I've worked with for a few years now that worked with another well-known coach in the industry, and that well-known coach in the industry told her that she had an opportunity to win a pro card that year, a few years ago. She had a consultation with me, and she's like, sent me a picture. She said, "What do you think?" I said, "I know you probably don't want to hear this." I said, "You probably have another 4 to 5 years before you're even ready for a national stage." I was like, "The amount of muscle you need to put on is drastic." And she said, "Thank you for being honest with me. I always kind of knew that in the back of my head, but I wanted to trust the coach I'd worked with 3 years prior." So I say ask your coach, um, but make sure you trust your coach first.
Yeah.
Yeah, coaches have agendas too, unfortunately. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't, it's hard as a coach. I mean, there are some clients I get, and I'm like, damn, they could be a pro, but it's hard. You don't want to just, I never want to tell somebody that right off the get-go. You don't want to falsely lead somebody. But to your point, what you said a second ago, Evan, too, and I feel like this is a good thing to kind of wrap it up with. Like, I do think when it comes to goal setting, realize that it is absolutely okay to change your goals or to pivot a
Mhm.
little bit throughout the process. I think some people get really upset when they maybe set a goal, and I see this all the time with people that maybe they set a goal to do a certain show, and then it gets closer to that show, and they have to make a different difficult decision that's in their best interest to do a different show. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. Goals, like you set goals to kind of give you a roadmap, but you don't like, it's not like you have to marry them. Like, it's okay to be flexible and to pivot, especially if you're doing it to benefit yourself, right? So realize that too. You can set all these great goals for 2026, but if you get a couple months into the year and you have to pivot a little bit, like that doesn't mean you're a failure either.
No. Also, though, I do think changing your goals can be beneficial, but let's not habitually change them. I had another client I worked
Yeah.
with that was probably 4 pounds away from stage weight on like 4 different occasions, and she wanted to keep kicking the can down the road for months and months and months and months till eventually she just stopped checking in and quit. Don't even know what happened to her. No idea. Because she kept kicking that can down the road, and I told her, I'm like, "We are already right there.
Yeah.
We're already right there." And that was also a specific individual that wanted to do bikini. And I told her, I was like, "You could walk in a fit model 8 pounds ago and do great based on your body structure." "Nope, I'm a bikini competitor." And she kept wanting to push that, push that, push that, push the food, push the envelope. And to the point she just couldn't take it anymore. Right. So when we could have been ready, and we were ready like 3 months before that, and 4 months before that, if we wanted to do a fit model. So you're not always going to feel ready, but I think some people they have this look in their mind of what they should look like, and that's not a realistic expectation based off their structure, their muscle mass, and where they are currently.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Be the best version of yourself, people. I know that is sounds like a cliche, but it's also very much the truth. You have to
It,
be the best version of you. You're not going to look like Laura Lee or Amy. Amy doesn't look like Laura Lee. Laura Lee doesn't look like Amy. They don't look, no one looks like each other. No one does. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. And that's on the highest level we're possibly talking about, too. So don't compare your physique to someone else's. Compare it against your previous best.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good place to probably end it and kind of wrap things up. And I guess since this is our last podcast, it'll come out for the 2025 year. I know I always say this, but seriously, guys, if you have suggestions for topics or, I don't know, even series that we could do in 2026 for just topics, like let us know, special guests that you want to see on the podcast. Feel free to just can DM me. But we always love taking your guys' feedback.
We love feedback, guys, and anytime we're at any sort of shows, I mean, when me and Paul were standing there at Nationals backstage a few times, there was like three or four girls that just ran by like, "Let the podcast," and like run out and see who they were. Like, don't be afraid to message us, guys. Like, we all enjoy it. If you have topic conversations, please let us know. They're always helpful. They're always helpful. Things that come up in your mind have probably come with a lot of other people's minds.
Yeah. And for anybody listening, I guess I'll leave you guys with this. If anybody is going to the women's seminar, I will be there. So say hello. I know a lot of women, well, obviously a lot of women go to that. So that'll be kind of fun.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well,
Thanks,
have a
everybody.
great rest of the year. And I feel like I'm going to be a total like weirdo saying this. We will see you guys next year.
I'm literally taking 5 days off. I'm gonna try not to turn on my computer or my phone for 5 days. It's gonna feel awkward.
Yeah. All right,
Be worth it.
guys. We'll chat with y'all in the new year.
Later, guys.
Thank y'all.